Okay, so I went back and looked at my wokeness as a wedge issue video, and I realized it's too long and there's a lot of rambling. So let me just cut it short and just let you know. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that it's the classic, or what I think it's what Bill Maher's been saying: the wokeness issue, social justice, and uh, you know, the social justice issue is sucking up all the oxygen in the room. Is basically what I'm saying. There's so much focus on that a much more dangerous and looming problem is being ignored. Climate change has fallen to the back of the concerns list, and now is a time when it really shouldn't. You know, now is a time when we should be rising up against the people who don't care about climate change, that are basically controlling society, preventing us from being prepared, preventing us from abandoning capitalism to prepare for the disaster that we've brought upon ourselves by putting most of the easily accessible fossil fuels in the ground, burning them up and releasing the carbon into the air. This is going to require a massive multinational effort. People are actually going to have to come together if we're going to beat this thing, and I don't believe that will happen, but that's what it would take, and that's why it needs to be. I mean, racism isn't going to be defeated overnight, um, but even without it being defeated, yes, black people are going to continue to suffer under racism, but things are getting better and better as time goes on, and as the races intermingle, and as everyone's skin becomes some various shade of light brown over time. Things will get better for racism, but but things are life and death, life and death. I realize you might say, well, things are life and death for black people that get pulled over and beaten. Yes, that's true, but we're talking about a small subset of the people that get pulled over. Not every black person that gets pulled over ends up dying. It's a very small percentage of the people that actually get pulled over end up dying. Maybe their lives are harder, maybe they suffer, but we're talking about something that has the potential to destroy humanity, to destroy civilization. Some might say maybe that's not so bad. Maybe we should be destroyed. I don't know. I don't want to believe I'm part of a doomed uh, life form. I don't want to believe that we screwed up and we could have saved ourselves, but we blew it. So, I'd like to see us beat climate change. I think it would give me hope for humanity. It would give me hope for humanity if we were able to make enough energy through alternative sources. That would be a major achievement for humanity. If we could make enough production level, commercially viable energy through alternative sources to replace fossil fuels, it would be an incredible leap forward for mankind. Right now, we're living off of the stuff that we've dug up. It wasn't a great achievement finding out that we could, take the stuff out of the earth and light it on fire and use it to power things. That's not a great achievement. It would be a great achievement if we could, use nuclear fusion to power society, but we're pretty far off from that. We need to do something now to make a transition. So that's all I'm saying is, it's time to make a transition. If we don't make the transition, civilization as we know it will collapse. Billions of people will die. Black Lives Matter, or the racism and discrimination against black people, gay people, trans people, whatever. It's a problem, but it's not going to result in billions of deaths. That's the bottom line here. We're talking about billions of deaths. We're talking about the end of civilization as we know it. We're talking about the end of humanity as we know it. What's more important to you? What kind of a world is it? Let's say we focus just on social justice and issues and racial justice issues. What are we gonna have? Imagine we did. Let's say we focused solely on that, and we managed to, reduce racism another what, 10% over the next 5 years. I mean, it's hard to quantify these things, but what good is it going to be to reduce racism significantly if we're all going to die? That's the point I'm making. Reducing racism just in time for us to all be destroyed by climate change isn't going to do a lot, Think about this. This is a life and death situation. This is the future of humanity versus, a small, much, much, much smaller subset of humanity, admittedly suffering, admittedly, facing more challenges than other parts of humanity, but it is not a life or death situation most of the time. Most of the time, it's an annoyance, and even, it really deeply hurts people. I understand that racism, discrimination, it hurts people a lot, but and I understand you're hurt, but we're talking about you being hurt versus everything being destroyed. There is a difference here. And I ask you to stop making this, really what they've done is they take issues that are about, they basically, what they're doing is they're tapping into your narcissism. Your narcissism is, oh, well, because this is my identity. This is what matters the most because it's my identity and I matter the most and my issues matter the most. It's all about me. Climate change is not a me issue. I have no personal relation to the climate change other than that it is the number one most pressing issue for all of humanity because if anything, maybe it's because it's personal in that I don't want to be part of a failed race, not a failed race, a failed life form in humanity. But it's everyone's problem. It's not just my problem. This is not just a white man problem. Climate change is an everyone problem. Don't you understand? This isn't about identity. This isn't about me personally. This is about the future of what we are. Whether or not we're a failed experiment on this planet. You could say that, with racism, you could say we're a failed experiment too, but we have time to address racism. We don't have time to address climate change. That's what I'm talking about. So I just wanted to basically, it's taking up, social justice, uh, you know, uh, anti-racism. It's taking up too much of the conversation when the conversation needs to be focused on immediate threats. Immediate threats. Racism, as bad as it is, as sad as it is that we've had the history that we've had, is not the immediate threat that climate change is. We have 10 years to start making a difference. And the differences they've made so far are a pittance compared to what is needed. What is needed is a hell of a lot more than making electric cars, and a hell of a lot more. I mean, it's a start. A hell of a lot more than people putting on solar panels. We need an energy grid. We need massive storage systems and a much improved energy grid. We need changes in the entire process by which we do everything. Everything we do in this society is based upon the use of fossil fuels. All the packaging, all of the concrete and cement you see everywhere, all of our farming techniques, our clothes. I mean, it's like it is ingrained into modern society. That has to be changed, and it has to be changed quick, or we're all doomed. This shouldn't be that complicated. What's more important, that we're all doomed, or that we eradicate racism entirely? Will it have been worth it if we eradicate racism entirely just before civilization collapses? No, it will not have been worth it. And that's what I talk about when I say you'll see in some years how these woke issues are going to look laughable. They'll look laughable when we've made a little bit of progress on those issues while humanity is in its death grip, of climate change and energy scarcity and death and chaos and dysfunction. So, stop. I'm sorry. I know this is not something you want to hear from a white guy, but the other part I'm going to say is I have no shame for racism. I have no white guilt. I didn't do anything. You could talk about, well, I have to be anti-racist and I have to be an ally and all these kind of things. This is where, stuff like this, you're acting as if your issue is the most important issue and that my issue doesn't matter. But clearly, if you understand the level of the risk and the incredible amount of work it's going to take, the incredible amount of focus and cooperation that it's going to take to solve the climate change problem, to solve the energy scarcity problem, to solve the overpopulation problem, solve the resource depletion problem, to solve the economic inequality problem, to solve our leadership problem. If you understand how difficult it is to do all those things, then you'll understand that needs to be made a priority first before we can get to things like racism. Racism has already been worked on. We've made some progress there, but we're not taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere right now. It's more is going in. The number keeps going up. The parts per million keeps going up. Until that number is either dead stopped or being reduced, it is a much bigger emergency than racism. It's a much bigger emergency than LGBTQ issues. This is not a subjective opinion. This is objective fact. And if you can't understand this, then you are so full of yourself, so full of your own identity, so concerned with your own narcissistic view of what's important, that you would rather make the future about serving your own needs rather than pulling together to solve a problem that is a direct threat to everybody and is a threat that needs to be addressed now, and in a way that racism doesn't, in a way that social justice doesn't. And that's the bottom line. It's a hard reality. I'm not trying to say that other stuff doesn't need to be addressed, but it does not need to be addressed on the level that climate change and resource depletion and overpopulation needs to be addressed. We're coming to a tipping point there, a point of no return. There is no point of no return for racism. We've gotten past the worst of racism already, but we are far from even close to addressing the worst of what's going to happen with climate change. And if you're not willing to admit that to yourself, then you're ignorant, and you have no understanding of what it means to prioritize, the problems that are facing you. And you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And the wealthy and powerful use that narcissism, use that need to make it all about you as the way to distract you from what needs to get done collectively, what we all need to do to save mankind from ourselves. And the sooner you realize that we have to stop the wealthy from pulling the wool over our eyes and stop them from running business as usual, the sooner we'll be able to do something about this approaching nightmare and make it into something that's less painful than it currently looks like it's going to be.